Graphics cards have become one of the most difficult items to buy in the past couple years, primarily due to mining profitability and a strain on global supply chains. Because of this extreme inability to purchase a GPU, coupled with the fact that many miners are purchasing them not for gaming, but to be a financial asset, it's massively increased the perceived worth of nearly all graphics cards. And there's nowhere more evident of this than the used market, a free market that self-regulates based solely on supply and demand, with cards on average over the past year being sold for more than 100% over their MSRP. And that's exactly what we're going to be investigating today. Fundamentally, I want to answer the question, how bad has graphics card scalping gotten over the past year? Now, I know that that's a really big question that can very poorly be summed up by, yeah, like real bad. But that's not really good enough for me. And if you're a Tailend subscriber, you'll know that we are way too analytical and way too data-driven for that to be a reasonable response to that question. So like my other videos, I went headfirst into this, collected tons of data from eBay sales over the past year for RTX 3000 and RX 6000 GPUs to give you real answers to many interesting questions. Questions like, how many millions have scalpers collectively made? What is the ratio between GPU sales and sellers? How much money has eBay made from scalpers? And even which cards are the most scalped cards? And can we take a look into the future to see if things are getting better and if scalping is going to be a persistent problem for people in this community? So to find out the answers to not only these questions, but so many others, let's break down the data and find out the truth about scalping over the past year. Let me explain. So first things first, before we dive into the data, you need to understand how it was collected and the limitations of it, because you shouldn't trust anyone, especially online, that just shouts numbers at you without giving you the context of where it comes from. How else are you going to trust that it's correct or compare it to your own findings? So as many of you guys know, during our monthly GPU Crisis updates, we cover relevant topics that affect GPU price and availability, including news topic, crypto price tracking, and most importantly to this video, graphics card used market pricing on eBay using Terapeak. Now what Terapeak is a market research tool to show sales trends and allow sellers on the platform to better understand how to price a product on eBay. Now what we can use it for in the context of this video is to see all products sold over the past year given a specific search term. And that's exactly what I've done for every current generation graphics card. We're talking all Radeon 3000 and RX 6000 GPUs sold on eBay since January 2021. And how many millions of dollars have collectively been made by scalpers? Now what this means is that the data that we've collected is localized to eBay in the US. So we're looking at a subsection of the scalper market, as there's no way to collect data for stuff like StockX, Craigslist, or many other similar platforms in every country. So the real number is probably going to be significantly higher than what you see here today. Additionally, Terapeak search is string-based, which can have muddied results. We've tried to overcome this by using conditions, like excluding all listings with the word TI in while searching for a 3060 non-TI model, but we haven't separated light hash rate from non-light hash rate for each specific GPU. So ultimately, this type of search is never going to be a perfect system, but it is as close as we're going to get. Furthermore, the reason why we're only looking at current generation GPUs is because it's a lot less likely that people are upgrading from an RTX 3000 or RX 6000 GPU right now, at least compared to older generation cards. And I wouldn't even class most sales of older generation cards as scalping, even if it was sold at a higher price. Scalping to me is purchasing something with the intent to sell it for profit. So someone upgrading an older card and selling that at market value isn't really the same as scalping, especially if you've enjoyed that card for a good long time. But now that we covered that, let's take a look and see how bad GPU scalping has gotten over the past year by answering some really interesting questions, before we then speculate on the future of scalping and GPU prices based on our findings. So question number one. What are the total used market sales figures for RTX 3000 and RX 6000 over the past year by quantity sold and millions of US dollars? Yes, millions of US dollars. Then based off that, which are the most and least scalped cards? So let's take a look at that now. So here we have total sales by units for RTX 3000 series GPUs over the past year. There has been 215,269 sold across the entire product stack, from RTX 3090 all the way down to RTX 3050. Bear in mind that the 3050 and also the 3080 12GB here were launched in January 2022. So there's going to be less data for them, but it is still relevant. So this bar chart right here represents every GPU and how many were sold in a given month. So an RTX 3090 in the month of March, let's say, is about 2,500 units were sold, with the quantity total for every RTX 3000 series GPU in that given month being represented by this line graph. And the values for the line graph are shown on the right-hand side over here. So the month of January 2022 was close to 13,000 units across all RTX 3000 series GPUs. GPUs. I've also dropped the total numbers for each model right at the top here. So an RTX 3080 10GB model has had 42,914 units over the 13-month period that we've been recording data for. And what we can see is the RTX 3070 right here in this green bar has outsold nearly all GPUs every single month, up until about August. But the fact that it's the highest sold card on eBay actually doesn't really tell us too much more than that. It could be because of a number of different factors. It could be that people are wanting it more than any other card, or it could just mean that there's more stock in the market for that card because Nvidia made more of those chips. And the next graph that I want to show you is total sales by US dollars, RTX 3000. That is $304,539,584.70 over that 13-month period. That is a ridiculous amount of money. So similarly to the previous graph, each one of these bars represents a GPU model, say an RTX 3090 being this orange one, and how many sales by US dollars in that month. So for the month of May, that is what, $7.5 million worth of RTX 3090 sold in that month. And we have overlaid a bar graph of total sales for all RTX 3000 GPUs for that month too, with May being the highest sale amount at $29 million worth of RTX 3000 series GPUs being sold on eBay. That is an astonishing amount. What this especially shows us is the sheer magnitude of sales, the amount of money that is passing through the platform from cards being sold. But it is declining. Now, we don't know if that decline is a positive thing or a negative thing. A decline in overall sales price could be because of quantity sold or because of average sale price of the item. Now, we would like to see that number decline because of an average sale price going down, but the quantity being sold going up. That would be an ideal situation, and we'll investigate that in a bit. And then we have the same data for our Radeon 6000 series GPUs, 29,270 units sold over the past year. So the Radeon RX 6700 XT in the month of May was 1,468 GPUs. Speaking of the RX 6700 XT, it has consistently sold more than everything up until about the month of August, at which point in September the 6600 XT takes over, but seems to be settling down under the 6700 XT in terms of quantity sold on the eBay platform. But an interesting observation is that the 6700 XT and the RTX 3070 at their supposed MSRP are about $500 each, which could be an area that people are focusing on, at least given the figures that we're seeing here. By quantity of units sold, they are both the highest in their product lines. And when we swap to taking a look at the total sales by US dollars for RX 6000 series GPUs, we can see that the RX 6700 XT was the highest sold by total US dollar amount. For the entire year, that's $9.06 million, with its best performing month being May 2021. Similarly, this line tracks the total sale amounts for all RX 6000 series GPUs, with the total amount being over here. So although the RX 6700 XT had a total sale amount of 1.4 something million in the month of May, the total RX 6000 GPU sales for May was in the 3.1 million. But the next thing that I wanted to do was aggregate RTX 3000 and RX 6000 data into this chart. Now what this chart shows is month-to-month sales of all current generation RTX 3000 and RX 6000 series GPUs, basically added together. And as we can see, September had the most amount of sales at 22,130, with the total for the entire year being 244,539. Then when we take a look at total sales by US dollars for RTX 3000 and RX 6000, $334,958,528.32. That is a lot of money for current generation cards. We're not even talking previous generation cards. We'll go into the money amount in a bit more detail. How much profit is actually made by eBay, scalpers, everybody. We'll cover that in a bit. But anyway, I thought this was a really interesting slide to have. The next one that I wanted to show you was total sales by units for RTX 3000 and RX 6000. RTX 3070 is over 50,000 units sold in the 13-month period. RTX 3080 is a pretty close second compared to everything else. And this also demonstrates the popularity, or at least availability, of RTX versus RX. There is a lot more being sold. We're not talking 2x, we're talking a lot closer to 10 times more RTX 3000 series GPUs being sold on eBay compared to RX 6000 series GPUs. The next question that I wanted to answer is, what is the ratio between GPU sellers and GPU sales? Now, this is an interesting question to determine the scale of scalping on the platform, because if people are only upgrading their current GPU and not scalping, we would expect that ratio to be very close to a 1-to-1, as in one seller, one card. But as you guys have probably guessed, that isn't the case. And several card models show that sellers are able to sell quite a few of them per month. So here in this graph, we have units sold per seller per month for RTX 3000 series GPUs. Now, the thing that I need to tell you guys about this graph is it's actually worse than it seems, because all of these are independent from one another, even within that same month. As in, for the month of February, each RTX 3070 seller sold an average of 2.42 RTX 3070s, but they also could have sold 1.96 RTX 3080s right here in the same month, and that would have no effect on the 3070. And the months are also completely separate from one another. As in, simplistically, this doesn't aggregate it on a month-to-month basis, and we will look at the aggregated data in a second. So as I said before, as the worst offender, we'll take this result right here. For an RTX 3070 being sold in February, the average person selling an RTX 3070 actually sold 2.42 as the average for that month. If you sold a 3070, you sold about 2.42 of them to average out everybody selling them. For this not to be scalping, that would mean in a single month, I would have to purchase a 3070, decide that I don't want a 3070, sell that 3070, one seller, one card, purchase another one, decide that I don't want it, sell it, purchase another one, or 0.42 of a one, you get how averages work, sell that to then purchase something else and decide that I want that card. That doesn't make sense, it has to be scalping. But in terms of which month was worse for cards sold per model per seller, that would be March as an average of 1.91 cards per model sold per seller for all RTX 3000 series GPUs. But the good news is that this has been declining almost every month since then, and scalpers have consistently been selling less of the same model, with the lowest months being December at 1.44 cards per seller per model, and January 2022 at 1.42. When we look at the data for RX 6000 series GPUs, we see some even worse outliers. Just look at the 6600 XT. On average, sellers of a 6600 XT in September sold 4 each, 3.97 to be exact. That is a stupid amount for the average seller to be selling in a given month on eBay. The average seller to be selling in a given month. There are likely sellers that are into the 20s and several that are just ones. But to average out at nearly 4 units per seller per month, that is stupid. Interestingly, in terms of which month was worse for sellers selling off the same GPU within the same month, the RX 6000 series GPUs trend very differently compared to RX 3000, with sellers selling off more of the same card type in recent months compared to previous ones, going from an average of 1.42 cards sold per model per seller in January 2021 to 1.86 in September, and most recently 1.18 cards sold per model per seller in a single month. But then when we take a look at the data spanning the entire year, this tells us how many sellers have sold the same GPU over the span of a year. So for example, if you sell 2 RTX 3060s in February and 1 in October, you are a 1:3 ratio of seller versus card models sold, which gives you this bar right here. So what this means is the top 3 scalp GPUs by average quantity sellers have been able to sell are the RX 6600 XT being number 1 at 3.55 sold per seller over the course of the year. The 6600 comes in at a pretty close second at 3.49 sold per seller per year. And in third, the RTX 3060 at 3.1 units sold on average per seller. Next, let's talk about how much money has been made on the platform by both scalpers and eBay themselves. Before we continue, if you're like me, then I think you're really going to like today's video sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an amazing online resource with thousands of inspiring classes and members across 150 countries. It's a place to develop a passion you've been wanting to try or get inspired to be better at what you do best. The first one that I checked out was naturally YouTube Success, Script Shoot and Edit with MKBHD to help me make better content for you guys. And maybe you'll find it as useful as I am. But with classes from music production, web development, film and video, even business analytics, Skillshare can help you make 2022 a year of new learning and growth. So if self-development is something you've been wanting to focus on, the first 1,000 people to follow the links in the video description are even going to be fortunate enough to get a free month to try it out, which can be used to jumpstart your next chapter and get on your path to success, however you define it. So here in this graph, we can see total sales by US dollars compared to MSRP plus 50% and MSRP. Now, the reason why I've done MSRP plus 50% is because MSRP seems to be a figment of someone's imagination and doesn't truly reflect the market. So adding 50% compared to the original MSRP is probably a much more accurate representation of the average price somebody paid for a card right now. But also bear in mind that products released later in the cycle, 50% may be less relevant. Up here is the percentage profit compared to MSRP plus 50% on the left-hand side, and then on the right-hand side is compared to MSRP. So as you can see, the RTX 3080 was by far the most lucrative for scalpers on eBay. In fact, for the RTX 3080 10GB model alone, it accounts for $72,969,062.70. And what that means, if you tally everything up, the scalper profit at MSRP plus 50%, so if I paid 50% over MSRP for the card and then sold it on eBay, leads to a profit of $41,509,746.24. If you bought the card at MSRP, that changes. It changes a lot. $122,578,080.51 if you're able to purchase, say, an RTX 3080 at $700. But another thing that I want to show you that will also allude as to why scalping isn't really going to be going away soon, you'll see this yellow bar tagged on at the end. How much have I estimated that eBay and PayPal, how much has the revenue been on the platform for facilitating these sales? And that is $50.2 million, which should kind of explain why eBay are incentivized to not really care about this. Essentially, if products are sold on their platform for more, they get more money. So they really don't care if something is overpriced compared to MSRP if it's being sold on their platform, because to them, cha-ching. However, this also doesn't account for stuff like promoted listing fees, fees on commissions and postage, advertisements on the page for the search results. So this number is going to be higher than that even. But I'm sure the main question that you guys want the answer to is, are things getting better? Well, fortunately enough, with the data that we've collected, we can actually see the average price history over the past year for every one of these cards and compare it to the biggest factor causing these insane prices, the price of crypto. So first of all, let's take a look at RTX 3000 series pricing over the past year. So here in this graph is the average sale price per month of an RTX 3000 series GPU for every single current generation card. And we can see here that there's actually a really positive trend. We can take the RTX 3080 10GB, for example, starting the year at $1,263, going up to a worse point, which was in May, $2,374, but it declined quite heavily with a lot of other cards up until about July. I remember reporting on this in our GPU Crisis updates. But since July, everything steadily got worse up until November. And if you've been following our GPU Crisis updates, November 8th was when we saw Bitcoin and Ethereum steadily declining since then, which makes sense because all of our RTX 3000 series GPUs have been declining since about then too, even equating for the fact that November and December are going to be heavy gift purchasing periods, which increases sales and drops availability, increasing demand. So the fact that we see a consistent drop off towards the end is a very, very good sign. And when we take a look at RX 6000 series GPUs with the same data, it shows a very similar trend, with May 2021 being a peak and everything starting to get better since November. So then what happens when we take all RTX 3000 series GPUs pricing data, average over the past year, and also integrate that with RX 6000 series data that you see here? We get this graph, with every one of these bars representing a different GPU in a given month. And what I've also done is included this line right here, which is the value of Ethereum in that month, as per MarketWatch. And what this shows is a very obvious and very clear example of what I've been saying this entire time, how the price of crypto directly influences the prices of GPUs, especially on the used market. So what this means is that as Ethereum continues to decline, we are expecting GPU prices to also continue to decline. So this is fantastic and such a positive thing to see, especially given recent news in crypto. It's great to see prices dropping lower and lower and lower. And then when we take a look at the same data overlaid by Bitcoin, because remember, Bitcoin is a better representation of how other coins are doing, we can see a very, very similar trend. Again, everything dropping in price as of about November, and a trend that I pray continues. And I can't wait to report on it in the next GPU Crisis update. This is such good news for all of us. I hope you're happy. So what are the key takeaways from this data, and what can we speculate about the future of GPU availability, pricing, and scalping in general? Well, I do want to make clear that the sales data that we've gone through today is pretty comprehensive, but the thing that I would love to have done was potentially compare it to RTX 2000 and RX 5000 data for the same time period after their launch. This would give us numbers for the difference in scalping compared to a few years ago, but unfortunately Terapeak won't give us data for that far back to compare against. Nevertheless, since availability was nowhere near as limited during that time period, I'm sure it would only go to prove that the past year has had scalping just running rampant. But the thing that you've got to remember about scalping is that scalping won't stop until pricing on the used market stabilizes near or below MSRP. And that's just how the market works. You can blame eBay, you can blame all of the other marketplaces for allowing this type of behavior, but the fact is, this is their business model doing exactly what it's designed to do. It's there to facilitate a transaction and take a commission on that sale. They obviously want the product sold on their platform to be sold for the highest possible amount, because that's more money to them. So scalpers are actually benefiting eBay, so they're not going to stop it. The only thing that I foresee stopping it is some sort of government oversight specifically for scalping. But honestly, that sounds like a horrible idea in other ways. So what that means is that it's up to us as consumers to disrupt the market by holding out for lower and lower prices. But the light at the end of the tunnel is things are looking so much better for the market as a whole, even compared to a few short months ago, as nearly all cards are trending towards their lowest price ever as mining profitability continues to decline. And if this trend continues, well, you're going to be able to pick up a lot of GPUs really cheap. You know, they're barely used, never mind on graphics cards on eBay. So thank you very much for watching, and get subscribed. Make sure that you don't miss future TechLens videos. Next week will actually be our monthly GPU Crisis update for March, which, given this data and given February's update, it's going to be a really exciting month. So if you haven't seen the most recent one, I'll leave that video and some other relevant content in the description and the comments section for you. Otherwise, a like is always appreciated, and guys, I'll see you soon.